Hi, it's Nicola Bird here with the Little Peace of Mind podcast, bringing you a completely fresh, new understanding to help you find freedom from panic attacks, anxiety and stress, and experience peace of mind from the inside out. So it's really lovely to have Jill with me today. I was just saying to Jill before I hit record that I feel like we must have known each other and met each other, but actually we never have, and this is our first time hanging out together. So you get to meet Jill as I get to meet Jill today. Jill, I wanted to invite onto the podcast because I've seen her blogs, I've seen her writing. I really resonate with her style. I love the way that she shares. Very, very honest, very like ruthless honesty almost, like really tells it how it is. And I love that in the writing that you do, Jill.
I've been told that before.
Yeah, but I like that. That's a cool style to have. And I read your book, Victim of Thought. And that's when I knew I had to get you onto the podcast, because I was also saying to you just before we hit record, I can't remember the specifics of the book, apart from one particular metaphor, which I want to ask you about later. But it doesn't matter, because what I remember is I read that book and it impacted me profoundly in a lovely way, somehow, that I can't describe. But it just, what I remember was getting a really common sense feel from it, like, oh, of course, from the way that you talked, the way you described. And again, I'll put a link to that book so you can go and get a copy of it underneath the podcast when this comes out. But for those people who haven't read it yet and who don't know you yet and they're lucky enough to meet you for the first time today, Jill, do you just want to kick off by sharing what life was like for you before you discovered this understanding that we talk about here at Little Peace of Mind and that you teach and share with people as well?
Sure. My story's a little different than some. Like, I didn't really know I had anxiety. Like, I just, it was just life. Like, I didn't have full out panic attacks or anything like that I can really remember. But it was really only after I found this understanding that you and I talk about that I realized, once my head was clear, like suddenly I realized, oh my God, all these times came up throughout my life. And that's sort of what I talk about in the book. I remembered all these times when I was little in school, and I had a lot of social anxiety. I didn't like having to talk to strangers, people I didn't know, very shy, very introverted. And, they in the book, I talk about an incident where in like 6th or 7th grade, where they suddenly just switched my schedule on me. And I had been with all the same kids for all this time. And like in the middle of the year, I don't know when it was, whatever, but they just switched it around on me. And I was just like a mess, I flunked all my classes, and because, and I just remember that feeling of a victimhood, like, why me? That's what that chapter is called. Like, why me? Why does all this bad stuff happen to me? And I think that's, what we feel when we have anxiety and stuff and in life, or even other things. We just have that victim mentality, and that's why the name Victim of Thought, because that's, in looking back, I see it was just how I thought about it at the time. Nothing was happening to me. Another kid got her schedule changed too. And I mean, I don't know, she may have been fine. She may not have been fine, but she probably didn't have the same reaction that I did. But so, just my whole life. So for me, it was always seeking ways to feel better from outside of myself. Friendships were one of my addictions. Ever since I was little, I would latch onto one girlfriend, and just bug the crap out of them until they couldn't stand me anymore. And they'd be like, get away from me, you're too clingy. And, and then I'd be sad until I could find the next one that would put up with me for a while. And because that, was seeking, it made me feel better to just have somebody like that. And then, I found my husband, and so he was my victim of the day. He was my happiness, and I had my kids, and they were my happiness. And then my work, I ended up having a successful career in the SEO industry. I was a pioneer in that industry, and that was, great for my ego.
Yeah.
And it was interesting because I started, speaking at conferences all over the world, and it's just kind of funny because I was a shy person, but yet I could do that. And that used to, my parents and stuff would just be like, how are you speaking at conferences? Because I was so quiet and so shy, but somehow that was different because I knew my stuff. And I mean, yeah, I was nervous speaking in public, but I know that's I heard one of your podcasts about speaking in public, but that, I found it exhilarating somehow. A chance to just get to share what I knew, where I was always so quiet and being the one always just listening. And when I found something that like, I felt like I knew better than anybody else, it was such a, it just opened up a whole new world for me.
You know, just to jump in there, Jill, what strikes me when you're talking is, well, firstly, where you just said at the beginning, I didn't realize that what was going on was anxiety. And you just reminded me, yeah, that was so true for me as well. Like I knew I had like proper anxiety because I had a bit of paper that said so. And I had panic attacks and couldn't go out of the house and all the kind of typical symptoms of anxiety. But after that had all fallen away, I would like try and work out what career I should be doing, what job I should be doing, and wanting to be top of the class and trying to achieve all the time. And I didn't see that. I remember sitting down with Dr. George Pransky once and saying, look, George, I really need to make a decision about what I'm going to do for my next career, my next business. Like, what am I going to do? What am I going to do? Like, I just need to make the decision. It's been hanging over me for years. And he said to me, what makes you think this is anything other than anxiety? And I was like, no, I don't have anxiety anymore. And he went, that's it. What you've just shared with me is insecure thinking. And that, when you were just saying what you were saying there, this whole quest to find a nice feeling outside of ourselves, whether it's through our friends, whether it's through our husbands, our kids, our careers, whatever, that is all coming from insecure thought. All of it. And insecure thought is just another word for anxiety, right?
Yeah, and that's everything in life stems from that, is what I see now. Like everybody, whether it's anger or anxiety or any issue, depression, it's just this insecure feeling. But like everybody's just looking to feel love and feel appreciated, and nobody else wants to give that to anybody. It's like, yeah. It's like, well, they're not good enough to give it to. They said something mean to me, or and that's all. Like if everyone would just be a little bit nicer. And I'm totally, I mean, I was always like, I was so much into my own self that I was certainly not, without innocently, without knowing. Yeah. I just didn't know that I was not giving people the love they wanted. If I had just done that, they would have been a lot nicer to me as well. It's, well,
yeah, because that when you talk about your best friend, right, like that's like, I want to give you love so that you love me back, and that's not what you mean by like being in a relationship or being in love and there being someone in front of you, right? That's coming from a complete place of insecurity, and there's such a different feeling to that, isn't there, where we need the people around us to behave in a particular way so that we can be okay. Yeah. And we all do it, like you say, innocently. We all do it. I still do it. I fall into it all the time, and and that is just, it's again just more insecure. There's like one diagnosis, isn't there, and it's insecure thought, and it's a misunderstanding of insecure thought. So it's having insecure thought with no recognition that that's what's going on for us, like a fish in water, like how you lived your life all the time with your kids, how I lived my life, in the same way, striving and trying to achieve stuff and all that kind of thing. Like a fish in water, you can't even see that, you can't see it's insecure thought. And then without an understanding of what insecure thought is, then you just start beating yourself up if you start to see that you're not, you feel like, oh, I'm not enough. I need to fix myself. I need to sort myself. I need to work on myself. Mm-hmm. No understanding.
Or you go the other way. I was more, everybody else is
right.
is wrong, and I'm the only one who knows anything, and that's just as bad in a way. Yeah. That was helpful to me to have. I had that ego thing, which I still kind of have, but which is helpful because it keeps, you know, I mean, I was able to be successful in all that because I just knew I was right. And I was, you know, like you said, with my writing now, you know, that's how I used to be in the other industry. And it was good because I just didn't take any crap from anyone, but it separates you still. Like, it's the other end of the spectrum, the people who beat themselves up because they're not good enough. Or if you think you're too good, you're, you know, then you're Donald Trump, and you're, you know, and you're not being good that way too. But people you don't hear about that aspect of it so much because those people tend to be successful, but inside.
Well, you know, and when I was talking to Molly Gordon yesterday, and I was saying to her, you know, like I used to achieve an absolute, like, loads. I used to be a really high achiever, but I wasn't a very nice person. Like, I like to think that I'm a bit nicer these days, but I was.
Yeah,
I really wasn't a very nice person.
I heard that interview and I was thinking the same thing. And I had I mean, the last thing I would ever want to be is mean like that, you know. But I know that people, you know, there were times where people were offended by me or hurt by me, or I mean, of course it was their own thoughts. I would justify that in my head, you know. It's not me, it's them. Grow a skin.
yeah, exactly. Get a life, sort yourselves out. Here, read this personal development book and fix yourself. Oh God, it's embarrassing to think about now, but there you go.
But it was so, like, I didn't know, like, I had no idea, because when you're so in your head, like, people would be mad at me all the time, and I'd be like, what did I do? Like, I literally had no clue that I said anything, because if they had said the same thing to me, I wouldn't have cared. I really didn't. I just would think it was funny. Like, people, you can't really insult me because I think it's funny.
Yeah. So there's a kind of a veneer and an ego thing going on there, isn't there? But it's all coming from the same insecure place. So what shifted for you? What's made a difference for you?
So when I started to learn about this stuff, I realized first, you know, that thoughts create our feelings.
How did you come across it, Jill, before you get to that?
I had heard Michael Neal's radio show. I had heard a few, you know, I was listening to different Hay House stuff. I had lost weight and started getting healthy, and my mindset was just kind of changing from all that. And so I was listening to Hay House, and you know, there were some interesting things. But then I heard Michael, and I was like, what? I didn't know what he was talking about. But I'm like, this guy's a genius. Like, I thought he invented all this stuff himself. And I was just like, I don't know what he's saying, but it's something about it. I thought it was so high level. So I like sent something to my husband because he knows all the sciencey smart stuff. So I thought maybe he could decipher it for me. And he listened to something of Michael's, and I said, what do you think? He's like, well, he said that it's just, you know, our thoughts create our feelings. I said, I know, but what does that mean?
Yeah.
And, you know, we didn't really get it. But then I finally ventured out and listened to some other stuff. I had listened to something Jenny and Rudy had on their site, 3 Principles Movies. And the way Jenny was saying it, because I really resonated with her and her, you know, how she talked about her shyness and all that. And as she's just, you know, after a bunch of times of hearing thoughts create feelings, I suddenly heard it. Actually, I heard it because the night before I had this thing with my husband. All he did was say one word, okay. And I had a whole story about how he was mad at me and this and why and what did I do and all this stuff. And so that it clicked when she said, thoughts create your feelings, because I realized, how could one word create this whole story in my head of the night before? And then I got it. And then from there, you know, things.
With that, just sorry to interrupt you, but I love that. See, this is the stories I keep bumping up against over and over again doing these podcasts. It's like, it's not, we hear about this, we happen to bump into this understanding and we start to hear about it. And usually the first experience is, huh? Like, what did he say? Yeah, what did she say? Like, I'm not quite sure, but there's something here. And that seems to be quite common. And then we listen and try to understand more. But it's always seems to be the case that it's not when you're sitting in front of the video or the audio or the whatever, for most people, when they actually start to see this for themselves. It's when they put the book down, they put the video down, they go out into life, and suddenly just a really little thing like that, like someone said okay, or I noticed that my colleague was really upset because it was raining and I wasn't, or I saw how my two kids responded completely different to exactly the same thing. It's when people see it like that in life for themselves, right? They just go out into life, and at the beginning we so often think, no, it's in the video, it's in the audio, I've got to keep listening, I've got to keep listening. And actually the evidence of the truth of the principles is around us every second if you just look.
Yes. And that's what I tell people in my book repeatedly. It's, I don't want you to believe me. I mean, and I used to say the same thing even in the SEO world. Don't believe me, go out there and look for the evidence, because that's the only way you're going to believe it. It's one thing for me to say it, but it's all around you in life. Everything that happens to you, or that you think happens to you, or that people, that the way everything you feel, you can find it if you want to look for it. And that's the only way you're ever going to change or believe it or get an insight, is to really seek the evidence.
Yeah, I remember doing a podcast episode with Mary Schiller, and she was saying she used to hear something and she'd go out and almost like experiment with it for the week and go, I wonder if that's true. I wonder if that's true. And sometimes that's all you need. I wonder. Like, that doesn't sound right. I wonder. And then just go looking for the evidence. And because it's true, you'll see it. You'll see that.
And you can't find a place where it's not, you might think it for a while, well, it's not true here, but if you really, get looking closer.
Yeah, so that simple truth that thought creates feeling, that you're only ever feeling your thinking. You're never feeling your circumstances. You're only ever feeling your thinking, ever, full stop, 100% of the time.
Yeah.
And if you go out in life, you'll see it everywhere. It's a game changer.
Yeah, and so once I saw that aspect, that's when I then could start to understand. I would listen to Michael again and be like, oh, now I get what he was talking about. That sort of helped me that was the first insight and stuff. But what I really saw later, a little bit later, was I started to see more about how I was listening to videos about addiction, which at first I left all the addiction ones last, because I'm like, I don't care about addiction. I don't, that's not my thing. Little did I know. And when I listened to one, I think it was from a conference, and it was Mark Howard or something. I'm like, wow, that was really interesting. Like, and then I listened to more, and I started to see all of life is one big addiction. And especially my life was, I realized all those, the friendships, and I was drinking a lot, and my husband, and just all these things were one big addiction. And I realized that we're always just seeking to feel better by whatever we can do outside of ourselves. And then, I was sort of pondering this and knowing, I already had sort of known happiness is inside of us. I kind of had that feeling. I knew that from what I had been seeing, and I believed that. And then it just all came together. One day I was taking a shower and I had a boom flash where, download from the universe, where I saw all my addictions in a line, like in a from a little kid all the way to the present time, and I just laughed how I had been seeking a feeling from them that I actually was creating myself in my own self, that I could create anytime I wanted to, because it's me. And I was like, after that, I just didn't care about drinking anymore. And that wasn't even what my flash really didn't show me drinking, but I still drink a glass of wine almost every day, but I don't want to I haven't had that buzz feeling. I don't want that buzz feeling. If I start to feel that buzz feeling, I put it away, because I don't, it's crazy, because that's what I used to drink for. I wasn't going to waste the calories if I'm going to have a drink.
Yeah.
If I'm going to have a drink, I want to feel it. But I like this, and this was a few years ago now.
But that as well. Sorry, there's so many gems in this, Jill. I keep interrupting you, but I'm like,
no,
hang on a minute. You just said something really cool. I need to stop you, otherwise I'm gonna miss it. But just that we look outside ourselves to change a feeling. I thought it was about, when I was asked that anxious question of George, I thought what job I did, what I did for a living, how I spent my hours between 9 and 5, or that's a bit mythical, but between 8 and 8. Like what I did for those hours would impact my well-being. And I'm just thinking about my clients who they think that if they could go in a supermarket and stay there, that would impact their well-being. If they could get on a car and drive in a motorway, that would impact their well-being. If they could go and pick their kids up from school, then that would impact their well-being. If they could get rid of their back pain or their tooth pain or whatever, that would impact their well-being. And they're in a constant fight to try and manage their, like, I've got to go to work. I have no choice. I have to go to work because my well-being and everything depends on it. Or I have to be able to go out the house because staying home isn't acceptable. Or there's so many rules around what we think we need to be doing in order to feel okay.
Yep.
You know, me too as well. And a real breakthrough in my anxiety was when I saw that I could never leave my room again and I could live in profound well-being. And that melted, all my fear was about going out of the house, and that just took all the pressure off, and it opened such a huge gap in my mind, such a huge relief when I saw that I know we keep saying it, but I really saw that my well-being did not depend on my circumstances.
That's really interesting, because that's like the opposite of what I would, what you would think you would be telling people in that situation, like that being on the road won't impact your well-being or whatever. Like, it's interesting that I never thought of it that way.
Yeah, no, but people are so attached to it. Like I would be like, well, what do you mean if I never see my mum again because I can't drive there? Like, of course that's not okay. And I'd be, what do you mean I can't? I have, like, if I'm scared in a supermarket, I could just leave. What do you mean if I can't go on motorways again for the rest of my life, and the impact that's going to have on my future children and blah, blah, blah. Like, that, none of that was okay with me. And I was so attached to that. Well, of course life is better if I can drive and see my mum. So I've got to be able to do it. And that's what my life will be better if I can do these things, right? And when I saw that, you know how I saw that? Because I listened to Kathy Casey talking about people on death row in prison who found peace of mind inside a cell where they knew they were going to lose their lives in the near future, and they knew they'd committed a terrible crime, and they were living in that environment day to day. And if people in those circumstances can find peace of mind,
right?
Oh my goodness, I had a whole house I could arrange around in, right?
Right, because it's no different if you had any disease or something that would prevent you from being able to do stuff. And yeah, I never would have thought of it that way. But it's just being okay with whatever is.
Well,
and
yeah,
if that's
and
what is. But
it's really seeing the truth, and I'm seeing it so clearly right now as we're having this conversation, is that when we're seeking to change a feeling by doing something outside of ourselves, so it might be drinking, or through making sure we've got a best friend in place, or all of those things, like, the answer doesn't lie there. The answer doesn't lie in being able to go to the supermarket by yourself, or having a wonderful relationship with your husband, or that your kids behave a particular way, or that you have a best friend, or that you don't. Like, it doesn't lie there. And so imagine if you didn't have to keep trying to create circumstances to change the way that you're feeling. I mean, that's what we're pointing to, right? Over and over again in this understanding. But I love it, just seeing it more deeply.
Because inside of us, we're a chemical factory. So, we think those things create the chemicals to make us feel good, but we're creating the chemicals in us that make us feel good. And so we can create them, really. I mean, we don't purposely create them, but they are created within us. I heard, like, Deepak Chopra say something like that. He was on an airplane with someone talking to someone, and he told this whole story about if the guy next to him was drinking and drinking and drinking. And he says, you don't drink much, to Deepak, and he says, no, I create my own. Something like that.
Yeah, well, that's what I've been seeing more and more. Like, just that, around that particular area, it's like I have such a lovely feeling more of the time these days, and a really chilled out, lovely, alert, clear-minded feeling of clarity. And when I feel like that, why would I do anything to why would I put something into my body to remove that?
Yeah, it's not the same anymore. I mean, when because if you have a clearish mind, which I generally have too these days, it just doesn't make sense. Before, the alcohol or whatever else would sort of help take away some of those thoughts, I think, and so it did feel better. But if you already have a clear mind, it doesn't feel better. It feels worse. It makes you feel sick or dizzy or whatever.
Yeah, because it's a poison, right?
Yeah, yeah. It's not taking. There's no thoughts to take away. I think that's what happens with people on anxiety meds too. If they start to get a clearer mind, that their meds might start to do, make them not feel good either. I don't know that for sure. That's just.
Yeah, yeah. No, I mean, it would kind of make sense. But so like, carry on the story. So you kind of started to see that everything was this string of addictions.
Yeah, I mean, that was it. That was the big insight. And then, I mean, that's really the story right there. And that's when, I just didn't care about drinking anymore. And just knowing that I don't need addictions. I haven't had any, addictive friendships since then. I see my relationship with my husband as less addictive. That's still a place that I get stuck. I still can get caught up if I think he's mad at me, that kind of stuff, which is silly. We've been together, 35 years. I'm pretty sure he's on board.
Yeah, I think you tested him out for long enough.
but it's still, that's that insecure place. But that's my experiment. That's my.
I'm sure he'll be pleased about that. It's my experiment.
Yeah, I know it's my learning. I think all these situations where we do feel stuck or we're not getting it, that's where we learn the most. Because I don't learn when I'm going about my day happy as can be. I'm not going to get insights or get a higher level of consciousness. It's when the shit hits the fan that, then I, maybe not while I'm in it, but afterwards. And I kind of hate that that's the way it has to work, because then I get scared what's around the corner.
Yeah.
But
that's what I'm seeing a lot of more recently, is that life really happens in service of us, right? So I know that for you, it's your husband. For me, I know my kids are my biggest evidence of where my grounding is at, evidence of where my understanding is, because I can see it with clients or friends or whatever, that I'm experiencing my thinking around about them, and I'm not experiencing them. But when my kids do certain things, they are definitely, it feels like they are pushing my buttons, right?
And if mine were littler, I'm sure I'd be, because I mean, I wish I had known this when they were younger. Mine are all grown now, and for the most part, I don't have to worry about them too much.
Yeah, but it's that's how I get to learn and see more, right? Because I suddenly see something new about my kids. Even my daughter doing that, it's like I see something new and different about it, and it just is great that life continues to, like to say, we don't always enjoy it, but it's great that life continues and will never stop showing us more and more and more through the challenges that we come up against. George always says life is a contact sport, and I do find that this understanding allows us to navigate that with more grace most of the time. But there's so many opportunities to learn. But there's one metaphor that I loved in your book, and I'd love it if you could describe it in your words. But you talk about like a river with some rocks and the thought sticks. Can you just share that? Like, pretend nobody's read your book, they've never heard it before.
Yeah, I got to try and remember it myself. I'm actually not a metaphor person, so it was funny. This kind of came to me as I was just writing, and I did it, and so I sort of forget it myself sometimes.
I'll fill in the gaps.
I reread it before we talked, because I know you wanted to talk about it. Because it's not really how it's not how I thought about it, but when I wrote the book, it just kind of came out of me, and it made sense. And actually, one of my 3P friends helped me fix it up a little bit. When I first wrote it, it wasn't quite accurate. But anyway, So yeah, I think thoughts flow through us constantly in and out like a river. They're flowing along, and then the sticks are thought sticks. So we have these thoughts that they're just flowing through us like sticks flowing down a river. But then we get these, some rivers have these big rocks in them, which I called situational rocks. So if you have a big presentation for the boss that that's coming up, there's a rock there. Any situation, you might have your husband rock, your kids rock. And so once in a while, these sticks are floating along, and they get stuck on the husband rock, let's say, and so you start thinking about your husband or whatever, and so there's no particular meaning on that husband. It's just the husband rock. It's not bad husband rock, good husband rock, or whatever, but it's whatever meaning then we end up giving it as it gets stuck there. So it might be that you're mad at him at this point because he said something, or whatever it is, or it's a presentation rock. You start pondering this presentation you have to give, and you get scared by it. You're not even giving the presentation, you're already scared to give the presentation. But then eventually these sticks come loose and float down the stream, and you're on to the next whatever the next stick gets stuck on. But I think that was pretty much all it is, and that's just how our thoughts work. And it's not like the rock causes, that's not the husband rock causing me any discomfort. It's just my meaning I give to it. One of the examples I used was an ice cream rock. So it gets stuck on the ice cream rock, and you might think, yum, ice cream. But like if you're on a diet or something, you might think, oh, ice cream, no, that's bad, I can't eat it. It can have multiple meanings depending on your state of mind at the moment that stick gets stuck.
Yeah. So you can have 20 people all heading to one presentation, and just because the nature of thought sticks is that they are varied and arbitrary and random, you'll have 20 different experiences of that presentation coming up.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, right. The situation has no meaning in and of itself other than what we give to it.
Yeah.
And that's based, it's just based on the way we were brought up, our culture, things that happen to us, how our mood at the time. All these things can impact what meaning we give. And in a different, any given day, we might think something else about whatever the situation is. It's not.
It's that neutrality that we miss because we think there are exceptions. So we think, yeah, but cancer. Yeah, but redundancy. Yeah, but divorce. Yeah, but motorways. Yeah, and we have exceptions to the neutrality of events and situations. But the truth of what Jill and I point to is that this is a universal principle, that even those rocks are neutral. And our experience of the rock is created by whatever thought stick's getting stuck on it at that particular moment when we're thinking about it.
Yeah. And those hard problems, or hard situations to you that, that where you don't see them yet, those are the ones for you to, maybe not at first. I always say, if you're first learning this, don't go looking at those, people in your life who are the ones that really seem to drive you crazy, Look at simpler things to find evidence first. And because I used to say there were three people, it was my husband, my mother, and one of my daughters were like my places where, no, it's definitely coming from them, it's not me.
Yeah.
It's them. But then, I was saying that to someone a month or two ago, and then I thought, you know what? Not so much anymore. Like, especially with my husband, like I had seen the most with him. That goes back and forth, but and I thought, well, even my mother, I just find her more amusing than anything these days, and then even my daughter. So it's like, they, without trying to do anything, and even holding on to them as being the hard problems, that's loosened up for me.
That's such wise advice, though, Jill, because if we can see it about a cheese sandwich or ice cream, right? Oh, that I think cheese sandwich great. That person thinks cheese sandwich awful, and that person thought cheese sandwich great yesterday, and yet today they don't like cheese sandwich. kids are quite a good place to go and look at that arbitrary nature of thought and food, right? Something that's perfectly acceptable one day is totally not the next. And or watching our kids go to school in the morning, and some days they love it and sometimes they hate it, and seeing the variation of thought and experience in another person over time, and seeing the variation in thought and experience between two people about the same thing. But you're right, like just to look at, I'm looking across my room at the moment, like bottled water. Imagine how many different thoughts, opinions, attitudes, thought sticks there are in this world about bottled water.
Mm-hmm.
Some really positive, some really negative, some that's a luxury item, some that's an environmental hazard, some that, you know, about a simple bottle of water. And
the funny thing about that too is that we think our opinion, you know, is the truth about bottled water or whatever it might be. Like,
we're really attached to it.
Understanding the separate realities is so helpful to just getting along in this world, because when you think everything you believe is correct, you know, I would say I'll do the ice. I would say, like, you know, chocolate ice cream is obviously like the best ice cream. Like, how could, and you know, it just doesn't feel like, you can't really imagine if you have a certain favorite. Like, how could anyone think, you know, butter pecan is better, you know? And we do that about everything. We think that those preferences are truth, and that just creates conflict.
Or we go, right, well, I'm going to keep using motorway. It's one of my favorite examples. Well, I think motorways are scary, and I can see that everybody else doesn't. So why do I get those thought sticks? I don't want those thought sticks. I want different thought sticks, Jill. Like, I don't like my thought sticks. So how do I get rid of them? That is the question I get asked over and over and over again. What's your answer? What would your answer?
Well, because it's not the sticks themselves are just thoughts. Those are neutral. So it's just meaning you're giving to the motorways or whatever else. And so it's just based on your arbitrary things that have happened to you, or it's just your filters. And I guess, you know, it's just seeing at some point that your filters aren't fixed. It's part of, we get this identity and beliefs that, you know, we think we are something. And this is actually something I've seen a lot for myself, because I changed so much. My blog is What Did You Do with Jill? Because I changed even before learning about this stuff. And so I really saw how you can be one person one day and another person another day, you know, within 6 months, be completely different person, you know, just totally opposite.
Yeah.
And how can that be, you know, and it's not just me. I'm not the only one that can transform like that. And so when you see that that identity is not fixed, it's not solid, any of these beliefs about the motorways, about whatever, is not fixed. It's just beliefs. Identity is like the most hardened thing. And then you get like beliefs, and then beliefs are just thoughts that we keep thinking. So it all comes back to just thoughts, and you don't have to think those thoughts, not to change them, but they could just change on their own.
Well, yeah, the river is such that new thought sticks come along at any moment, right? Like, that's the nature of the river and the thought sticks. But there's also something you said there that's really key, that is so hopeful and gives so much sense of possibility to people. Because you're right, it's not just you and it's not just me. Like, I'm seeing this over and over again, like with my clients, and my guess is you are with people that you speak to as well. It's like things that people thought were impossible become possible. Like, I thought I'd never drive on a motorway again. I thought I would always find it difficult to go away from my home. I have clients who, you know, thought that it would be impossible to travel, or it would be impossible to spend time with a particular person, or to ever have a minute where they don't think about their health anxiety symptoms. And yet suddenly they start noticing that they're a person who doesn't think about their health anxiety symptoms anymore. But when you're at this side of the journey, it looks like this is me, I'm stuck forever, especially if you're 60, 70 years old and you think this has been my whole life that I've been like this. I'm a hard case, nothing's going to change. And what you reminded me of there was, you know, I often think about this, but our identity has shifted and changed all our lives. Like, we know change is possible, because if it wasn't, we'd still be going out drinking all night long, sleeping with a load of different men, smoking, partying. It might just be me, but that would still be what we were up to now, right? And that doesn't look like a good idea. It doesn't make sense. I didn't have to change my thought sticks about drink, drugs, and rock and roll, right? They just changed because the system is designed that way, all on its own. The system is designed to change, and with that, our identity, which is also created through thought, shifts and changes. So it's far more natural than people think. People think they have to get in there and shift their identity and change their beliefs and do something about it. My clients are always asking me, yeah, but what do I do?
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, just let the river get on with its job. Get out of the way and let the river get on with its job, because it's designed that way. It's like rivers are designed to flow healthily.
And sometimes if people can think about some, how they used to be, maybe, an old identity that they had that they just don't anymore, they can be like, oh yeah, just to see, because it doesn't feel like identity changes, because inside we do sort of feel like the same person, because that inner us really is sort of the same person, but that sheds all the preferences and all that. That doesn't have any preferences or identity. That's just pure consciousness. But so many things change in our life. Like you said, you're not the same. You don't like the same things. And if you just look at that, how much has changed, it helps to loosen up. Well, maybe all these things might change too. Maybe they won't.
I'm actually just thinking today, Jill, just being in life and how this becomes apparent to you. So what I noticed this morning is that I went to put some clothes in the ironing pile. And this is such a mundane example, but I went to put some clothes in the ironing pile. And I realized that for the last year, I've pretty much put the same 4 or 5 t-shirts in the ironing pile every week, right? Because this week they weren't there. And I was like, oh. And what I realized is I'm working full time. My husband's at home at the moment. That's only happened over the last week or so. And I've been coming out and working in an office. And what I realized is, oh, I'm dressing differently when I come out to work in my office. And that's why there aren't the same t-shirts waiting to go in the ironing pile today. And what I saw from that was, wow, I didn't have to decide to change my wardrobe. I didn't have to decide different t-shirts to wear. Like, I obviously just knew to wear different stuff. It just made sense to wear different stuff when I came out to the office rather than when I'm slobbing around at home all day in my tracksuit bottoms. And without any conscious effort to change, what comes to, when I reach into the wardrobe in the morning, a different thing comes to hand without me being consciously aware of that at all. I did not have to get involved in that change process. And that's a tiny, tiny mundane example. But to me, that was like, oh my goodness, this is what big change is, the same as this. It's like, it's so little effort that you're not even aware of it.
And that right there, what you said, is the key to how we should be all living our lives. Like, that's the key to a happy life, because if you let life live you, it will. If we keep our own personal thoughts, like if you suddenly started questioning, why am I doing this? Why am I wearing this? And, started making a big deal of it, it'd all be ruined. But,
you're right, because I've had times in the past where I'm like, do you know what? I should dress smarter. It's not good just because I work at home to slob around in my pajama bottoms all day long, just dressing from the waist up when I have a Skype call. That's not acceptable. I should smarten my act up a bit. And then and then just gone off into a load of thinking about how crap I am and blah, and how I'm not doing what I should be, and how I should be something other than I am, and blah 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 blah.
As soon as ego thoughts get involved, it's just wrong. That's what I'm seeing more and more too, that the thoughts, I call them ego thoughts, whatever, those are just not to be trusted. I've seen enough times that they tell me stupid things, crazy things that just aren't true. So it's like, if all those ones weren't right, why I have to be suspect of all of them, because they don't have a good track record. and that for me is key. I mean, not to discount them completely, but, and that's just a learn, just again, seek evidence that they really don't know what they're talking about, and that you don't need them. You can go about your day and things get done like magically. You just get up and do things when you're supposed to do them. I mean, Google Calendar helps.
But that's it. I mean, that's what I saw about, I'm just bearing in mind that, the questions that my clients asked about, but so I show up each week and I listen to the audios or the videos you send me, Nick. But then what do I do in between the 7 days? Like, what can I do? What can I do to change this?
Yeah.
And I'm kind of like, do you know what? The biggest thing to get your head around is how little there is to do. And in fact, if you could get out of the way, then the river is designed to flow. Yeah. And it's so hard. I know, because I'm a doer, an action taker. I used to think that nothing's going to happen unless I do something about it.
Yeah.
Right? And
we feel bad always having to tell people that, because I have it in I have a Facebook group for the book, and so a lot of people with anxiety in there, and they keep asking, of course, the same questions, and I keep saying the same things. But if people stay in this conversation long enough, that's one of the things they see for themselves, and when that penny drops, it makes a huge difference. So what I find, and you probably find this in your group as well, where you get new people who come into the group, and they're worrying about what to do and how do I do it and how can I do more so that I get the result quicker, and they which all is symptomatic of the anxiety. And you've been there, I know I've been there, totally feel for that. Like, I'm not saying that you shouldn't do that. You can't not do that. When your state of mind, when your thinking is so kind of contaminated and rushed and rushy and busy, like, you don't have any choice but to think that way. You can't think any other way. But what I know, because I've seen it again and again and again, is like 8, 10, 12 weeks later, that it slowly starts to sink in, and the questions are different, or the questions are gone, and the curiosity is in a different place, and and people start to actually see that there's less to do than they think. But it like, some people see that straight away, but for a lot of people it takes a while to see that. But there is always less to do than we think, always. Because what they want to do is try to push the thoughts away, or how do I get rid of these thoughts, or how do I whatever, but that's just until they see that's just adding more thought on top of thought. It's okay. That's all I keep telling people. It's okay, just have those thoughts, it's fine. And you have to tell different people different things depending on where they're at. So it might sound contradictory to some people, because you might tell one person something, but it's you can't.
It's true. That's so true. Because there are some clients where I'm like, I really don't care if you have those thoughts. Like, have a way. Like, you have full permission to have whatever thoughts you want.
Right.
And there are some clients where and some people I talk to, where I'm just like, what if you didn't go there? Just like once, right? Like, what if you didn't?
Right. It's different.
What if you just didn't ask how do I for a week? Like, what if you didn't? And you're right, it's different for different clients, because different things make sense at different times.
Yeah.
For different people and different circumstances. But it's a fascinating journey.
Because once you know this stuff too, then you get to the stage where you beat yourself up because, here I am being anxious again. I should know better. I mean, I find myself in that spot too. I should know better how, I wrote the book.
Yeah. Well, no, do you know, Jill, it's really interesting you bring that up, because when I started this work, one of the reasons I held off doing it for so long, because I was scared that if I started thinking and talking about anxiety again, it would come back and get me.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So I thought that, I don't want to be spending time thinking about anxiety. Why would I want to do that? And then as I started to get worried about that, of course, I started to feel it. And again, that's one of those examples where life has put this group of clients in front of me to teach me something really valuable, which is, so I went through the beating myself up stage. Like, I can't believe I've got the audacity to teach this when I'm feeling really nervous inside. And And what the gift that I got from that, from those clients showing up at that time and working with me at that time, the gift I got to see was that, oh, again, that's okay to be human, right?
Yeah.
Full permission to have anxiety. And it not be a big deal. It's just not front page news anymore. That's the difference. So unlike when my clients come into the program, when the people read your book and come into your Facebook group, they come in with this understanding. It's not okay to have anxiety.
Yeah.
It's not acceptable. It's not okay. I want it gone. That's full stop. And what you start to see over time is that you can be anxious or not. Who cares?
Right.
And that's different freedom in that.
It's different stages. You sort of, you get this freedom from it for a while or something, and you think it's gone, and then you realize when it comes back again, oh, I don't know anything. I'm stupid and blah blah blah. But yeah, you got to go through, and then you can get to a point where you can kind of. I was traveling in England I was at the 3P conference in May, I guess, and I was visiting a friend out there, and I had to take the train. And I was confused which one I had to take and stuff like this. And previously my head would have been like killing me and, all up in my head, but I stayed really calm. But I could see like the anxiety thoughts were like back here kind of above, like they weren't in. And it was really cool because I just was seeing them there and not letting them get me somehow, and I just stayed very present, looked at all the signs really carefully, didn't just hop on a train because maybe it was the right one, which I probably would have done in the past, and and it was fine, and I felt really good and calm, but it was cool to see it, like to actually see the anxiety sitting there in a ball.
We're going to keep seeing it again and again and again, because anxiety is one of the myriad of human emotions that every single person on this planet has. Nobody is free from.
Yep.
But it doesn't have to entrap you and snake. It doesn't have to be front page news. I think that's what's so hopeful about this, is it doesn't have to be the thing that defines you anymore. It doesn't have to be the thing that dictates every decision in your life. It doesn't have to be the thing you think about as soon as you get up in the morning. It doesn't have to consume your every waking moment. It can be something that's tucked away on the back shelf and comes out every now and again, along with anger.
And knowing that everyone else has it too. Like so many people just think they're the only one, or that theirs is worse than everybody else's. Well, yours isn't like mine, so of course, it's fine for you to read this book and whatever. But that's I hear that so much, that well, mine's the worst of anybody in the whole universe. And it's not, everybody has these same things.
And that's what Jill and I are both pointing to, is that, we all have the same things, and it's all made of the same stuff. So if you understand the stuff it's made for, it doesn't matter if it's health anxiety, if it's needing to be near the toilet and, toilet urgency anxiety. It doesn't matter if it's traveling, if it's social anxiety, if it's generalized, just not even sure why, but feeling anxious all the time. Like, everything we've talked about in this podcast applies. So if you've been listening to this podcast thinking, that doesn't apply to mine, hit stop, go back to the beginning, start again. But Jill, I know we're going to have to do a second podcast, because I could just keep talking to you for another hour.
Oh, that'd be great.
Easily.
Yes.
But I'm going to wrap it up now. But can you just share with people where to go So give the full title of your book so people can find it on Amazon, and where to go to find out more about you and your stories and your experiences.
Sure. The book is called Victim of Thought, Seeing Through the Illusion of Anxiety. And you can find it on Amazon. You can type that in, or my name, Jill Whalen, Whalen. It's in paperback, Kindle, and audio as well. And it's really cheap. It's like $2 for the Kindle. So I just want to get it out there for people. I'm not caring about making money, but it's selling really great, which is awesome. And then my blog is whatdidyoudo.com, and I've been writing in it for 4 years, pretty much consistently every other week. So there's hundreds of articles in there, most of them, except the early ones, talking about this stuff in various forms or another. I've kind of run out of things to say already.
Yeah, no, it's great, and I will put the links to both of those underneath this podcast when it goes out on the blog as well, so people can click through and
Great. Thank you for having me.
Thank you, Jill. It's been such a pleasure. Like it does feel like this is the 10th time we've been out for coffee rather than the first time that we've met. But I love that, and I know that everyone's going to appreciate you spending time with us today. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you. You're welcome.
If you're curious to find out more about what I've been talking about on this episode, the best place to start is to go to alittlepeaceofmind.co.uk, and there you'll find my audio, Freedom from Anxiety, and you can listen to that. Is the best place to start to get some of this understanding into your own bones so it can start making a difference to your life. Until next time, I'll speak to you later.